Good morning. I am Bobby Barber. I work with math and science here at Mobile Public Schools, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about some of the recent research on how people learn, brain science, learning science, whatever you want to call it. In the last 10 to 20 years, there's been a ton of research on how people learn and how to get information to stick. And unfortunately, a lot of that hasn't reached the classrooms yet. So I was going to share some of that with you and hopefully give you a couple of ideas that you can use in your classroom to make a couple little tweaks to what you currently do and hopefully have a better effect on your students. So the first thing, or the main thing I want to talk about today, is something that's called retrieval practice. Retrieval practice is a way to get your kids to bring up information that they've already been exposed to. So to retrieve that information from their brain. A simple way of thinking about it is students are getting you're getting information out of the students as opposed to you putting information into the students. So there are several ways to do this. Some of the most common ways that I see this done, or this is done by teachers, not just in district, but around the country, I'm sure. One of those choral response, where you have all the students get an answer, think of a response to whatever your prompt is, and then have the students reply all at once and yell out that answer or say that answer or whisper that answer, or whatever method you use. Another way for this to be done is to, again, ask the students a question, give the students a prompt, and have them write it down on slate boards or little whiteboards, or the Smart Pals with the paper inside of it. Any way that you're able to use that little method or equivalent of a slate board in your classroom. And another way is a more techie way, where you have student response systems, clickers, smart response, or apps or websites that you can ask questions, pose prompts, things like that, and have students reply there. Most retrieval practice, or retrieval practice in itself, happens mostly on quizzes, on tests, during exit tickets. But in order for it to be really effective, we need to find ways to have students pull this information out of their brains constantly throughout our lessons, throughout our day. So doing this at all times is very powerful, and it has the highest effect size on student learning. Something that's real important with retrieval practice is giving your students a proper amount of wait time. The average wait time between a teacher asking a question and either the teacher giving the answer or the first student replying with an answer is 0.7 seconds. It's less than 1 second between question and answer in our classrooms. And that's scary to see that number. So whether the teacher gives the answer or the first student gives the answer, that leaves almost the whole class without a good amount of time to actually retrieve that information, to actually think about that question, process it, and try to come up with an answer. So giving the proper amount of wait time is vital. And that amount of wait time really depends on the question or the prompt that you give. If it's a simple recall question, 3 to 5 seconds may be enough time. If it's a serious question that they really have to analyze something, then maybe you're going to wait a couple of minutes, and that's okay. But giving the students the amount of wait time so every student has a chance to think about, process, and then try to retrieve an answer or a response is vital. And one of the last things about retrieval practice is that it needs to be low stakes or no stakes. Students shouldn't feel pressure that they're going to get a grade throughout the learning process on the answers they give. We will be giving them assessments, quizzes, tests, whatever you want to call them, that will have high stakes. But through the learning process, they need to be able to be comfortable giving answers, making mistakes, and knowing that they're not going to be penalized for it. And that'll create a culture of embracing mistakes and understanding that they create an opportunity to learn and to grow, not, oh no, I'm wrong and I'm going to lose points for this. It will also discourage them to have a motivation to find the answer in some other way, whether it be looking at a friend's answer, trying to look back through their notes or something like that. It'll let them know that it's okay to make a mistake, so I should try to just come up with this and see what I know, as opposed to see what I can find. So here are a couple ways to optimize your use of retrieval practice. One of the most important things is providing timely feedback for their responses, both correct responses and incorrect responses. If a student gives a correct response, they need to know, yes, that was correct, so that they know that what they thought of, what they gave you, what they provided you with was correct and was acceptable. And then obviously, if they give you an incorrect response, they need to be told, no, that's not where we want to be yet. And then they need to be given a way to get to where they want to be, whether it's a quick hint, go check back in your notes, go read your book, go look this over, go turn and talk with a friend. But they need to be given feedback where they get to the right answer. And then throughout the day, throughout the lesson, throughout the week, whatever the time frame is, you need to keep re-asking those questions that students are getting incorrect until that they're correctly retrieved the first time, so that they don't have to go back to those, so that students have success retrieving that information and their brain builds those connections to move that information from their short-term memory to their long-term memory. The next thing is you need to space out the retrieval practice. The research says that after students, or after humans, get some piece of information, some piece of knowledge, it needs to be retrieved within 24 hours to start making it permanent. If you wait longer than that, they really start losing things. So depending on the format of your day, in a more elementary setting where you have the students all day, you can ask them things from earlier in the day at the end of the day. If you're in a secondary setting where you only have them for a short period of time every day, then maybe you ask them at the end of class, you assign them something for homework, you ask them at the very beginning of class the next day. But within 24 hours, they should be retrieving that information and start trying to build those connections in the brain to make that a permanent piece of their memory. And you need to continue that retrieving, not just one time, not just two times. Continue doing that over the course of the year, really. So it starts out, you do it a little bit later that period, later that day, first thing next day. And then you build that space, or you increase the amount of space between retrievals. So 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, weeks, months. But they continue having to bring that knowledge back to the front of their brain, bring that out and give it to you so that it stays relevant to them. So real learning occurs over time. So using retrieval practice and spacing out that retrieval practice helps embrace that and helps make that learning permanent. And another important thing, and this is, easiest for me to picture, at least in a math setting, is to interleave your content and your concepts. And what they mean by interleaving is you give students different types of problems to practice on. And I'll go to a math setting. Typically, we teach them something in math, and then they go home, or they, later that day in class, they practice just that concept over and over again. Well, that allows them to know exactly what they're supposed to do and just keep repeating the same thing mindlessly over and over. If we give them different concepts to do, but that kind of look similar, now they not only have to retrieve, well, what type of problem is this? What is this asking me to do? Then once they know what it's asking them to do, okay, now how do I do that? So it makes them think, okay, I'm given this triangle. What am I asked to do with this? Am I asked to find a perimeter, an area? Am I asked to find the length of a side? Am I asked to find the size of an angle? So it's not just every time you're given something that looks like this, you do the same thing over and over. I'm given this concept, I'm given this problem. What concept is it? What problem do I need to do? And then how do I do that? Now, the research shows that this looks bad when you're doing this with the kids, that they get a way lower percentage of questions correct with this mixed type practice, as opposed to if they get it in mass, where they have the same thing to do over and over. So initially, the percentage correct, the accuracy is going to be lower with a mixed or an interleaved practice as opposed to a mass or the same thing over and over. But the research shows that over time, the learning sticks and is way more permanent, something to like an 80% to like 20%, like a difference of 60% permanent learning, as opposed to, you know, where you do the massed practice over and over. So it's really effective, but looks ugly. So you have to be ready for that. Last thing I want to talk about is formative assessment and how we can tie in some of our formative assessment and retrieval practice. So I'm going to ask a question. What method of formative assessment has the highest effect size on student learning? What makes the biggest difference? What shows through research the biggest growth and the biggest gains in students? And the answer to that is whole class response. So no matter what type of formative assessment you're doing or what method you're using to assess the students on an ongoing basis, having the whole class respond to every question has the biggest effect on learning. It forces every student to engage with every question. We think back to that wait time. If you only let kids answer when they're ready to answer, the first kids are going to say the answer and the rest of the kids don't have to think about it, and therefore they're not engaged with that question. So having the whole class respond forces every student to think about every question every day. Now, that takes a lot of time up front. It's much easier to ask a question, have either you give the answer or a student give the answer and move on. And that, you know, the first couple of kids that get the answer, they get it, you know, seconds, minutes sooner than the last kids that get the answer. So you're able to move on and save that time. But in the long run, only the kids that are answering the questions are really getting anything out of that conversation. So if you can allow every kid to engage and tell the kids, okay, here's the question. You're waiting for me to give a response, whether it be an oral response on a little whiteboard through some kind of technology response system, but you have to have everybody wait so everybody gets a chance to think of an answer. So having that whole class response will take longer up front, but will save you time in the long run because you'll have less time for remediation, and all of the students will internalize that information and be able to build on that as you go to further lessons, and it will save you time down the road through that as well. So in the long run, it will save time, but up front, it will be a little more time and take you longer in class to get through things. Finally, I want to show you some resources if you have interest in learning a little more about retrieval practice. In the middle is a screenshot of a website. It's called Retrieval Practice. Retrievalpractice.org has resources, strategies, research, social media links, things like that, all about the science of retrieval practice. The 2 books on the sides are 2 books that are big on applying research to the classroom. So the one on the left, Embedding Formative Assessment, talks about methods of formative assessment, what they may look like in different settings, and which ones are most effective according to research. And the book on the right, Make It Stick, has a lot of discussion and examples about retrieval practice and ways to use that. And we have both of these books and many others available at our Curriculum Center library here at the Culver Center. So if anybody has any books that they're interested in reading and just kind of borrowing, all you have to do is contact us up here and we can get that out to you. Or if there's anything that we don't have and you'd be interested in, we could also order that and have it for you in a couple weeks. Thank you and good luck.